This podcast was produced on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation.
Welcome to Australia.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
This is kind of tragic.
Someone who is such a connoisseur of reality television.
The content is hideous.
So sorry about this. Oh my god.
Welcome back to The Cringe is Real, the podcast that cringes along with Australian reality TV and pop culture at large. I'm Sam Crimean, and today I'm joined by the Queen of Jury Villa and my gym buddy, Aileen Chong, to relive Australian Survivor Titans vs Rebels. Australian Survivor Titans vs Rebels aired on 10 and 10 Play earlier this year and was the 9th season of the 10 produced version of the show. Aileen Chong, welcome to The Cringe is Real.
Hi, Sam. Hi, all the way from where are you now? Peru or?
I'm in Bolivia right now, which is very
What?
strange. Yeah, in the
That's
lovely city of
wild.
La Paz. You're in freezing cold Melbourne, I see.
Literally freezing cold this week. It went from sunny to just raining 24/7. I hate it. I'm wearing a puffer jacket and Uniqlo heat tech inside my
Heat
room.
tech inside.
I
That's a
know, and I'm
first.
still cold, but this is reality and it sucks. No, I'm kidding. It's good. It's fine.
I know. I'm a little bit dreading coming home, but also it'll be fun. So what has got you cringing this week? Or have we just covered it?
I think we just covered it. I mean, I can never stop complaining. I've lived here in Melbourne for 8 years now, and the cold always gets to me every single
Yeah.
time. I thought I could manage, and then boom, today I'm like, like shivering.
And no one's ever prepared. Like, I love every Melbourne winter. Everyone just freaks out like it's never happened before. And we all look at each
Literally.
other and we're like, what is happening? And we
And
all
it just
find
makes it
jackets.
and it just makes it that much harder to like get up in the morning and then go to the gym. I don't know how you do gym at like 5, 6, 7 a.m. in winter. I don't want to do any. I use the cold as an excuse for everything. You know, I don't want to go cycling because the wind is even colder on my skin, even though technically I'm not sweating as much. Everything is an excuse.
We should talk about the gym actually because you smashed some of those challenges out there on Survivor this season.
Thank
Was your
you.
training regime a part of your preparation going into the show?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily trained for the show,
Yeah,
although, you know, you could say that watching over 60 hours of your life trained you mentally. And then just having been going to this gym since COVID, basically, you and I go to the same gym, which is awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
we do.
Yeah, go BFT, big market, woo. No, honestly, they are amazing. They have really helped with my fitness for the last few years. And you really notice once you're out on the island how much of a difference that makes because you're up against all these other like really brawny, really strong Australians, and then
hmm
I'm kind of like more petite compared to all of them. So I really had something to prove, and I really think that I was able to challenge them on a lot of things as you saw in the
It
season.
it was a joy to watch, and I think the sort of theme of the season for the fans anyway was like, we finally got this season where we had all these kind of typical jocks and stuff that were there that normally make it to the end, and they all kind of went home really early, and it was so fun as a bit of a shake up. For the people that have watched the show for so long, yourself included, what was that like to kind of be a part of?
Well, having voted off a lot of the strong people earlier on was
Yeah,
almost like a relief. I didn't have to worry about, potentially if I was going to make it to the end game or further, that I'd have to, push a log with Viola there competing against me or like lifting something. And I was like, oh God. But it was so fun because these obstacle courses and these challenges, you don't really do them in real life. Like, who is going to build this in your backyard? Seriously?
no,
It was so fun, throwing things in the air, hitting people. Well, not hitting people, shoving people, if I want to put it lightly. Um, you take the opportunity as you can grab it.
exactly. Let's relive some of Australian Survivor Titans versus Rebels, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah. So, week one, when did you first learn about the Titans versus Rebels theme for the season?
Ooh, okay. So this was like very towards the end of my audition process. So I wasn't told the theme. I don't think anyone was typically told the theme until the very end. I had my final interview, and they said it was going to be to pitch to the channel, me as a character, and I was like, okay, cool. I was pretty confident in like who I am and what I had auditioned prior. And they were like, we're probably going to talk about the theme. I was like, cool. And for some reason, I had a feeling, a really, an inkling, which you can see now is completely wrong, that I thought it was like a millennials versus Gen X or like old
Mm,
versus young theme. Everyone was like rumoring it online, and I had practiced mentally in my head, okay, when they ask me questions about how I deal with old people, I'll be able to answer all these things. And then I sit in the Zoom meeting and they're like, so we're going to pitch you as a rebel. And I was like, what?
you're like, what?
I was like, okay, but what's the opposite of a rebel? Just for context. And they're
Yeah.
like, that's a
Nice.
titan. And I was like, what the hell is that?
Like, of
And
course, a Titan naturally.
exactly. And then the interview kept going and going, and then I was trying to answer all these questions, literally on the spot, and I felt terrible. I felt I didn't give my all. I was taken aback. I went back to my boyfriend and I told him the story. He was like, maybe you should pitch that you're a Titan. And I was like, I don't think you can do that. I think once they
Aw, I
visualize
love that.
who
That's
you
cute.
are. Yeah. And then he actually suggested I do like this rebel quiz online. When you do those like 16 personality quizzes online, he was like, why don't you do this rebel quiz online that I found? So apparently I'm like a traveler, which means that I like to explore lots of ideas and options and places. And I was like, sure, that's me. Oh, and then I wrote up this 2-page PDF on why I'm a rebel, and I sent it in an email to
How
production.
rebellious. I
I
love that.
know, I know.
Look, I identify with that. I feel like I'm very rebellious, but I do have a lot of spreadsheets. So,
Yes,
there's that.
yes. I feel like we can
Both
be
things can be
organized
true.
chaos, chaotic rebels.
Exactly. Day one, what were your first impressions of the other rebels on the tribe?
Day one, I thought that I was going to be this very extroverted person and kind of be the social butterfly and speak to everyone. And then I thought everyone would kind of come towards me. I would be able to attract them in that sense. But I actually found that everybody else was also fighting for attention, whether that's them naturally or because there was a bit of pressure. Day one, you want to make a good impression. So many alpha characters trying to overpower each
Mm,
other that I actually felt a little more taken aback and took a reserved position in the tribe. My first impressions of people like Scott was the most rainbow and sunshine, so beautiful. He was actually, in my opinion, like kind of running how to build the shelter and giving all his ideas. And I was like, this guy is killing it in the social game. I can't find a reason to not like him. And then we had like people like Garrick, one of the older guys on our tribe, also working really hard. A lot of respect for him. We had Raymond being Raymond.
Lemon.
Really goofy, really
Yes.
clumsy, but really dorky and cute. And that's someone I like as well. And then we had, yeah, people running off here, there, everywhere. And I was sort of the only one sitting by myself weaving palm fronds because no one was weaving palm fronds. What if it rained? We'd be screwed. So that was sort of like day one.
Nice. Good strategy, I think. You don't want to, you don't want to peak too soon, and you don't want to be that person that like starts barking orders. Like we've all seen what happens to that person. So,
Oh, I definitely didn't want to be barking orders. But yeah, I feel like at day one, I just had to adapt. It wasn't my intention to isolate myself and be more quiet and
mm,
reserved, but I had to do that. I had no choice.
mm. Had you made any sort of day one alliances or deals that we didn't sort of see on the show?
Definitely with Scott. So
Okay.
after our shelter was like sort of built, a lot of people wanted to sleep on the sand because there actually wasn't enough bamboo for all of us to sleep on top of. So most people just like
I do
slept by the
wonder
beach.
that always. I'm like, these shelters look tiny. And I'm like, you kind of want to go to tribal so you can make some room in the shelter.
Exactly. And like bamboo is really really uncomfortable anyway. So
Mm.
this is why Scott and I bonded night one, because we both attempted to sleep on the bamboo and kept shuffling and talking, and we bonded over Broadway musicals, and that's how our bond instantly formed. And we didn't even talk about strategy really. It was just like a friendship.
Oh, that's sweet. Um, Speaking of the shelter, how did you feel about the cuddle crew?
The cuddle crew were there. I wouldn't say like that they were like the biggest concern for me, because in fact if you isolate yourself and you make a very obvious group like that, it actually puts a target on your back, and it highlights people more in terms of like whether they have more power. You know, those four people in the cuddle crew, they actually decided on their own terms that they were going to take up the middle of the shelter right in front of the fire, and everyone sort of had to like go around them. So it was so obvious. And to me, like I've watched many, many, many seasons of Survivor. That's sort of dumb. That's you don't
Yeah.
want to be doing that. So I was confused, but also like at least it was taking the heat off me. Not that I had any, but you know, coming in, you always worry about being the first boot, and I was really glad that people weren't considering me as that.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same reaction watching from home. It was like, what are you people doing? Like,
Exactly. I
have
mean,
you
what would
seen
you do,
this?
Sam?
Oh, I mean, same as you, I would have absolutely pushed the spotlight onto them and what they were doing and been like, we should be worried about this, as long
Mm,
as it's not you, right?
exactly.
Um, I want to talk about Ferris from the start.
Mm.
So his on-screen charisma was so apparent to us, but was that apparent to you there on the island as well?
Definitely. Ferris was one of the most charming people we had on our tribe, in the game in general. Um, you could see him building relationships, whether they were deep or like a little more shallow, with every single person on the tribe. There would be instances where I'm just sitting on my own and I could see him hop to the cuddle crew, seem really, really in with them, hop to Garrick and Raymond and have a really, really good chat with them, have one on ones with everyone. And I was like, this guy is one to watch, but also could be my shield. But him and I got along really well anyway. You know, we formed a connection on night two. Me, Raymond, and him spoke under the stars. He actually also attempted to sleep on the bamboo on the very first night. I think it was me, Garrick, Scott, Ferris, and Kirby on and off. So well, it wasn't the cuddle crew, so obviously we all got along.
Was everyone that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, how good. I do love that in group situations where you kind of bond with people because there's like another group forming that you're not a part of. And it was, yeah, fun
exactly.
to watch that happen naturally. So in week one, we said bye to Frankie, Jess, and then Peter, which was your first tribal.
Mm.
Talk me through that experience. First time you're on a tribal, were you nervous?
Oh my god. Well, I was nervous for the first challenge because I was like, I don't want to have to go to tribal council first. Thank God we actually smashed the challenge. Woohoo. And it was really interesting to have a chat with my tribe about who we thought would potentially go home first on the other side. And I'm so, 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 so sorry, Frankie, but when that tribe came back the next day and we were like looking for who got voted out, I actually like couldn't remember or recognize Frankie. It was just like there was too many people, 12 people on the tribe. Like how am I supposed to memorize all of your faces, let alone like any names that I didn't know any names. So when everyone was like, "Oh, it's Frankie." I was like, I can't figure out who left.
I do
um
always wonder
so
that
yeah.
because, like, when the tribe comes in and JLP's like, you're getting your first look at blah blah blah, and everyone's like, "Ooh," I feel like I would just be like, "Who was that?"
Exactly.
Particularly at the start.
But what I did notice was that the people who I had interests in, specifically Eden and Mark, they were still there. So that was kind of like cool. But
So you'd
because
already kind of eyed them off from the start.
well, 100%. You know, when we did that
Mm.
boat scene where they were on the barge and we were
Hmm.
circling around in our pirate ship boats, we had plenty of time to literally stare them in the eye, the Titans. And I noticed that Eden, he seemed like a nerd. He seemed like a super fan. He was giving
Yeah.
off super fan. And then Mark seemed really smart with his suit jacket, and I thought that maybe he was like a business entrepreneur man or something, and yeah, maybe he could be arrogant or a bit cocky. This is just like first impressions. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
spoken to the guy, but I was like, but maybe he could be a shield or a smart strategic player, and I'll keep that in my back pocket for later.
Wow, I loved it so much. You gathered so much just from shooting that scene and looking at each other. It's amazing.
Yeah.
In the second week, Tobias is next out.
Mm.
So Cuddle crew members are dropping like flies at this point. Were these votes easy to do because there was sort of momentum forming? Talk about those decisions that you and your sort of new alliance were coming up with.
So the night that Tobias went home, that was actually the vote that I kind of directed at my tribe. It was my time. It was my time to shine, come out of my cocoon. I did think at the beginning maybe I played the really subtle game and like a slide through the cracks, but then I was like, that's boring. So I was, and then when we went to the challenge and lost the challenge, no one had a plan. Kirby had taken a lot of heat for creating the PETA plan, but then voting against the misfits and pretending to play both sides. So she didn't want to pipe up and say anything. No one else did either. And I was like, you know what? I actually have a plan. It's pretty good. We're going to split the votes, half on Tobias, half on Alex. Sarah will have to decide who to vote for in the revote. And it's a little bit sinister, a little bit cruel, kind of funny, but it also gives her some sort of power and choice in who she decides to go home. And we thought that she would vote Alex, but Hurricane Kelly, decided
Mhm.
to change things up.
Speaking of Hurricane Kelly, this week also you guys sent her over to the Titans. Tell me about how the tribe came to this decision.
It was pretty unanimous and easy. Prior to the twist happening to send somebody else over, there was a majority that was going to vote out Rihanna. Um,
All right.
And then, yeah, I'm certain that that was going to happen. However, when Jonathan throws in the non-elim sent to the other side twist, I guess all of us just instantly thought, or maybe didn't even think about Rihanna at the time because maybe she wasn't even the right person to consider to send over. But Kelly, on the other hand, she had been causing a bit of chaos at camp, a little louder than most, rubbing people off the wrong way, kind of. And a lot of people just wanted a break, but also to use her to our advantage to disrupt the Titans camp. We told her, don't let them sleep, keep talking, keep yapping, do what you do here but there. And she was quite hesitant at first to go, but I think she came around to it. But also it was kind of a forceful move because all of us were, gonna vote her anyway.
Yeah. And look, the viewers at home, thank you because it made for some fantastic television. We loved watching you guys throw that grenade into the other camp. I thought it was pretty funny as well, like when she comes back and then everyone was like, So, what happened?" And she's like, Nathan's gone home." And she was sort of like talking big, like, it was all because of me and stuff. How was that when she came back?
Oh, it was as if we got no useful information whatsoever. Like, she couldn't even remember half of the conversations that she had on the other side. Any specific questions that we had directed at her, she was like, oh, and then come up with like an answer that, whether it was true or not, we were just like, oh God, this woman cannot give us the information that we require. And then she said a lot of like different comments. Um, about like speaking to other people. I remember that she told me that she mentioned to Winna that I wanted to speak to Winna and I had a message or something. And I was like, I never
You're like,
had a message.
"What?"
Yeah, I was like, well, what are you talking about? So it was actually interesting because when I went over to the Titans later on and spoke to Winna, I was just like, so did Kelly like talk to you about this? And he was like, I'm not really sure. It was really confusing. It was like Kelly was telling everybody that they had spoken about each other to everyone. The only question I had about Winna was whether he was Filipino because I saw him from a distance and I'm Filipino. So I tried to clock that. He's Thai, so I got that wrong. But that
Mm.
was a question I asked him when I eventually got to speak with him. But I don't know how Kelly interpreted that as I had a message for him or the other way around. I'm so confused.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly was a great character on television, but I'm not sure how long I would last in her company in real life. So you guys did a great job. The patience of a saint. So week 3 was when we had the tribe swap. So you ended up on this new tribe with the Titans. What was that like? And were you happy with where the cards fell?
Practically, I was very happy to have a tarp over my head. We had been so wet for so many days, maybe almost 2 weeks at the Rebels. And let me tell you, Sam, like everyone may dream to go on Survivor. You think that you can handle it. You probably can handle it. But just being wet constantly for so long and then being wet in your wet clothes and then sleeping wet, it's just not it, like you take comfort for granted and then you appreciate it once you're suffering through those just very inconvenient circumstances. And I just wanted dry feet. So luckily at the Titans camp, we had the tarp. The sun was really strong in the afternoons once it was setting, and it shone right towards the Titans camp. I was actually able to dry my hoodie finally and
Wow.
sleep pretty warm. So I was very happy with that situation. And in terms of like the split with majority rebels and 3 Titans, it was looking really promising at the beginning. We did have a divide between Kirby's alliance and our alliance, but I had thought maybe we could work through it.
Amazing. This week we say bye to Viola, thanks to
Hmm.
Caroline. Um, Sarah, more Cuddle crew members down, and then Garrick. This was the vote where you did the backup plan vote for Kelly. Talk me through this strategy because I was a little bit confused watching at home.
Sure. So at the time, we thought that Kelly had an idol. For some reason, someone saw her put something in her bag. Could have been anything. But immediately there was suspicion that it was an idol. I knew Ferris had an idol. He had told me back at Rebels. And then when it got to the point where I knew that the OG Titans in Charles, Winna, and Valeria were not working with my alliance with Garrick, Raymond, and Ferris, I knew it was time to come up with a plan C. Because hypothetically, if Ferris did play his idol for Garrick or whoever, and then Kelly played her idol hypothetically for Kirby, which I think she would have, then we have a stalemate. And it would just be complicated at that time to like talk about it, revote, or like come to a unanimous
Hmm.
decision. Like, why don't we throw a vote on Kelly? Because no one actually cares if Kelly goes. Even Kirby, Kirby was keeping her as a number, but it was pulling at strings and keeping an eye on her like babysitting. So
Hmm.
I think it would just been easier to throw a vote on her and then spare us
Yeah,
more tribal council chaos.
let's talk about Kirby. From a TV perspective, we were kind of fed this story that she was sort of playing on her own from the start. Was
Hmm.
that how you guys perceived it as well, or did you think that she was working with you?
I don't think she was playing alone. I think she definitely had her right hand woman in Rihanna, and then later
Hmm.
on, Scott got really close to her and became second lieutenant as well. I think she just had a way of luring people in, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all. I mean her endearing personality to
Hmm.
capture people, get them engaged in her stories before even talking about strategy. That creates a lot of trust. And then they kind of overlook. Well, all of us didn't at the time. We didn't really say that her changing her vote and voting with the Cuddle Crew was necessarily her flip flopping. We just thought it was poor strategy. So when the audience watches it back on TV, it looks like she's really like untrustworthy, flip floppy everywhere. But at the time, that's not the perception of everybody. So that's why everyone was leaning towards working with Kirby.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it was impressive to watch because I hadn't really seen anyone play that game style before because she sort of
Hmm.
seemed to be quite transparent with people about not being fully committal to alliances. It was almost like, yeah, she didn't want to commit too early from the start. And that I was worried for her. I was like, oh no, people are gonna, you know,
Mm.
not think that you're working with them. But yeah, it sounds like she had this really great way with people where she had trust from multiple sides, and it kind of felt genuine.
Definitely, and
It
I
was
think a
really
lot
great
of
to watch.
people definitely, I think a lot of people also had a sense of intimidation because she did say out loud that if you cross her once, she'll never look at you the same way again. And so, obviously, in the game of Survivor, if you do that, which I did, um, then it's really hard to come back from that. And I think what she had assumed from the beginning, she actually thought that I was on her team or her alliance. And it's not that I wasn't. I think maybe because Kirby hadn't watched too much Survivor before, it's really common for you to actually solidify your alliance by saying it out loud, but we never did that with her. And then so when it came down to potentially voting Ferris and Rihanna pre tribe swap, she was like, okay, you, me, Scott, Rihanna, we're together, right? And I was like, to get Ferris out. And I was like, oh, I think this is where I have to draw the line now.
Week 4 was twist week. We had a few random twists thrown at you. As a fan of the show, obviously you thought that these were coming. How did you sort of prepare for these, if at all?
You can't really prepare. I mean, you can speculate, but I remember, being on the island, I actually didn't really want to speculate that much because you just get into your head about what could happen. It may never happen. And then things change on a dime. So all these plans that you may have come up with may never happen anyway. So, yes, we were speculating a little bit about when the auction was or when XYZ was happening. But with these twists, I was still taken by surprise, especially the one which happened at Tribal Council.
Mm,
And even when Jonathan announces the twist, you still don't know what it is. Like you don't know what you don't know what the challenge is. You know that 3 people can be safe and also have a chance of voting, but what are the odds that a challenge is going to suit my skill set?
exactly. And I thought this one was great because I don't know, we're used to lots of them on this show, but they know when to put them in at the right time. And we were all on the edge of our seats at this tribal twist. Talk me through this challenge and then what happened after. Like, did you have to just make all these decisions on the fly? This is the tribal where ultimately Charles ends up getting the chop. And I
Yeah,
believe who was it? Was you, Ferris, and no, who was
Kirby.
the other? Ken Kirby had the vote. Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me about how that one went down.
Prior to Jonathan announcing that there was this twist, I was fully convinced that I was going home. And I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, this is so sad because I hadn't made merge yet. It's a super fan's dream to make merge and jury, which thankfully I got to there at some point. But then Jonathan announces this twist, and I think you can see on screen I'm squinting my eyes, like confused, wanting like him to say it again for validation. My mouth was opening, and I was just like, "What?" um, you never I just never thought in a million years that this I would be in a tribe to experience this. It only happened once last year with Simon. And it just felt really special, and I knew it was going to be also like a great episode to watch because when things change and people are on like about to go home like me, it's fun. And so we walk into this challenge, and I was I was like super serious. I tied my hair up, I pulled my pants up. I took my shoes off. I was like, I need to be the most comfortable version right now because I need to be able to be mobile, do everything. And then they explained the rules. And I was like, okay, I'm very average at doing cornhole and beer pong, throwing bean bags onto a platform, but I'm not terrible. So I'm just going to try my best. And then you have to balance these blocks. And I was like, I can do that too. And then just moments before the challenge started, I just zoned in, was so focused, and then smashed it in like 10 to 15 seconds, way ahead of everybody else. And I didn't even have that much time to celebrate because I just looked around and I was like, who needs to win next? We need to have at least two of us in the power position. And luckily, Ferris came third, Kirby came second. You could not have scripted that at all. You know, the three people at Tribal who had been influential at the time. And yeah, it was a great one. Great one.
It was amazing to watch. I thought at this tribal, the ex Titans were a bit kind of like mouthy at tribal, and it didn't like look well for them. Was that a bit of editing there, or did you guys notice that as well?
Nah, it was definitely quite intense. And I actually think the opposite. I think they actually downplayed how nasty it got. And I didn't I wouldn't say I felt personally attacked. Like at the end of the day,
Hmm.
I know it's a game, but I definitely instigated and prompted for those comments to come out because prior to Tribal Council, I had been playing Double Agent, and again, I spoke to Charles, Winna, and Valeria that I was open to working with them. I was gonna put my hair down and tell them that Ferris had the idol and all of that. And so they were pretty convinced that they should consider saving me at least, even though they couldn't fully trust me. And then I do the whole like rebel strong thing at Tribal Council, do a 180. And of course, if you were in their position, wouldn't you be taken aback about someone who's just gone back on their word, which is what I did. So I don't blame them. You know, their reaction was what it was.
Yeah,
But unfortunately for Charles, I think it showed his strength in being able to really rebuttal, and the lawyer came out in him, and I was like, I need him to go ASAP.
yeah. It just confirmed that he was a threat. Hey. Um,
Totally.
then also this week we had Alex getting sent to the Titans in another
Mm.
twist. Were you happy to see him again?
Seeing Alex on the Titans was actually fine because if I think about it, I didn't really have any connections to anyone on the Titans at that point. Um, all of my allies were on my side already. So seeing Alex, at least I knew that we had a past relationship with him, and he was less connected to Kelly and Kirby and Scott. So it was pretty certain that he was going to come join me, Raymond, and Ferris. So that was nice. But it's so interesting how they did two twists in a row, you know, sending Alex to our side because hypothetically, if the Titans lost that A-frame challenge, and I was voted out, I would have maybe gone to the Rebels instead, and that would have been a whole different ball game.
Oh, yeah, wow. I hadn't even thought about that.
Mm.
Um, also this week we finally say bye to Hurricane Kelly. This felt like a bit of an easy option, like you were saying before. Was that the motivation behind the vote, do you think? Just kind of everyone was a bit done with her energy at camp?
It was easy, but it wasn't because if it's that easy, then there's a lot of suspicion around it, and there was a lot of concern about whether Kirby and her crew were going to use that to their advantage to actually vote somewhere else. And I remember at Tribal Council, there was still some tension and uncertainty about whether Kirby was going to just help us with the unanimous decision to get out Kelly. But I think something clicked in her head about, you know, she was actually being quite disruptive to her own alliance, especially since she wanted to do her own thing. So it felt like the time to vote her out.
Yeah, and look, then we go straight into merge. So it was kind of like story wise, it was kind of nice to park that um the whole all of the Kelly storyline because she was sucking up quite a lot of the airtime. So it was good to kind of like end that, move into merge, and then it's like, all right, the players that came to play can finally get down to business.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
the
Yeah.
first, yeah, yeah, the first tribal of the merge though was a very emotional tribal. This is where Scott decided to leave the game. I've got to give it to 10. I thought this was really well produced as a reflection of mental health being more important than being a part of something like this. Talk me through what it was like to be there. Was everyone supportive? Were some people feeling a bit strange about it? Did you see it coming?
I didn't see it coming for that tribal council, and I will say because um of the way it started with Scott telling Kitty that she was essentially going to be the one to be voted out. It did cause a bit of chaos in the scramble, trying to recover from that one. So that threw a spanner in the works. But all of us, were mature enough to understand that when someone is having mental struggles, it's beyond the game and it's they're only human. Um, Keeping in the game can be detrimental for him, but also potentially for us, so it was really in our best it was really best for Scott to make his own decision. And everyone at tribal council really really supported him, and it was emotional. You had people tearing up. It was really sad to see him go because he was supposed to be like my day one, my ride or die, even though we had ups and downs and had ended up on separate alliances. But it was the best for him, and he's very, very happy and supported now.
Oh, that's excellent. Um, yeah, so it was interesting because I was, as a viewer, kind of excited that this kitty vote was going to happen. Do you think her finding out about that is what kind of activated her? Because I don't really know if we saw much of her gameplay before this, but then it really, really kicked off the her and Caroline on the Warpath alliance.
I think so. She did have her little speech at tribal council, about how basically don't mess with her, otherwise she'll come after you. And all of us were like, "Ooh, go Kitty!" It was more of like a "Let's go!" We
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
see interesting gameplay and people a little riled up just for entertainment purposes. But Kitty is also someone who, she can't lie. So when you're actually playing with her, um, it's kind of you want to go up to her and like ask questions because either she'll give you a short answer or she'll kind of look a little sketchy. But it was fun to have her
Ah, so
in the
it
game.
was easy to read, was it?
I think so. Yeah.
Winner and Eden are then the first two properly voted out of the new merged tribe. And you were on the correct side of these, so congratulations.
Thank
Um,
you.
how did those votes come about?
So for the winner vote, I remember that Mark's name was being pitched first. Mark had already been on the bad side of Caroline and Kitty, and it was, I don't know, to take out Mark and bring down Winna and Valeria with him. But I actually had a really good relationship with Mark since the start of the merge, and even pre-merge when we were standing on the mats. This is the challenge that Kelly went home, and we had gone idol hunting. Mark and I exchanged information across each other's mats about who had the idols. He said it was Rihanna on his side, and I said it was Alex on my side. And I was like, that's cool. Okay, awesome. If he's willing to exchange information, I feel like there's a workable relationship here. And him and I formed a bond really, really quick. He's a diplomat. My dad, for 25 years, was also a diplomat, and I instantly had this respect for him because I know how hard my dad worked throughout his life and made all those sacrifices for us. And then we just talked about culture because he had lived in Thailand for many years too. So when they said Mark, I was like, let's switch it to Winna. I'm pretty sure there were other people influencing this vote as well. But for me, I was trying to pitch to like Eden, Ferris, that Mark wasn't a threat. And Winna, he had just won the last immunity challenge, and he was Ferris's biggest threat while we were on Titans. First, he was a social player, and so yeah, I feel like I was able to influence what I could to switch it to Winna.
Amazing. And then unfortunately, the next week, it all goes horribly wrong, and we sadly say goodbye to Eileen as you are voted out,
No.
and the Queen of Jury Villa is born. We were all screaming at the TV. Um, did you see it coming?
I didn't see that one coming. You could call that one an actual blindside. And let me tell you, it was so fine. I'd rather be blindsided. Wouldn't you? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
imagine if you thought that it was gonna be potentially you, and you have all this anxiety leading up to
Hmm.
tribal council. You're just uncomfortable. I mean, that's how I felt a few tribals before when I thought I was going home. This one was more like your name popped up, and as soon as I saw my name pop up for the first time, I was like, all right, this is it. kept popping up, and I was like, everyone's spelling my name right. And then I just felt good. I felt great. I didn't want to leave the game, but I just felt really, really happy with the experience I had. I know I had moments that you couldn't take away or hide from the game. And jury, I was in for it. I was ready for the luxury, ready for the
Yeah,
food, ready for the feast.
amazing. Which way did you think it was going to go going into that tribal?
I thought we were gonna vote out Mark. And I know it's weird I say that because I was trying to save Mark for the last two votes, but it got to the pointy end where
Mm.
it was either Mark or I guess me. I didn't know at the time. But Ferris had also created this fake alliance with Caroline and Kitty, now that Eden was gone. And so we couldn't really vote either of them because we thought that we were working with them. Turns out not. So we couldn't get out Rihanna because Kirby would be upset, and Kirby was also forming this relationship with Ferris. We didn't get Valeria out for some reason, so it was Mark. Yeah,
Amazing. Talk to me about Jury Villa. So each, tribal, a new person would have joined you in the villa.
hmm
Um, it was fun to watch you greet them and all of that. But were there discussions had about who you were kind of all backing to win?
for sure. And I feel like the person who instigated those discussions was me because I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that at the end, my vote counted to the most deserving player. And I needed everybody coming into Jury Villa after me to tell me exactly how the dynamics went in the game while I wasn't there. And to get as much information as possible to make my most rational decision at the end. So I would constantly ask them questions. I remember I would sit some people down. I had my notebook in Jury Villa and I would literally draw diagrams and arrows of like where people's votes went, who switched alliances. Valeria was very helpful. I remember she helped me figure out the Jaden vote because that one was really confusing. And yeah, I offered my support definitely to Ferris as well because I knew how he played, and a lot of people didn't understand that the subtleties matter in this game.
Wow. Were some people harder to convince than others that Ferris was playing a great game?
Oh, for sure. I think most people in the jury just had their eyes on Kirby, and then even everyone was confused about Mark, Caroline, Ferris, Raymond. So it was a tough
Hmm.
one.
Yeah, wow. Um, the final week, Kirby being voted out was so shocking and devastating to watch. Did that one surprise you as well when she rocked up at the villa?
I mean, I wasn't surprised because Alex had basically outed her like a couple of votes. Yeah, a couple of votes prior.
Hmm.
And it's really, really, really tough for someone who's perceived as the best player in the game so far to actually win. I think the person who came closest is probably David Jeanette.
Hmm.
And his edit, he made it very clear about why he made certain moves and stuff like that. So, well, does obvious winner for that one. But yeah, I think
What about the fire making challenge that went down between Raymond and Caroline? What was that to kind of like to witness?
I wish you were there, Sam, because
Me too.
it actually didn't. Oh, how do I say this? It wasn't great from the beginning. It really wasn't. Like
Oh no.
they really cut it down shorter in the edit, but it actually took so long. It was, I think it started off with both of them not creating the correct base or structure. Therefore, it was really hard for the fire to catch. So, yeah, it was kind of awkward but also fun to be there because you're just witnessing some kind of not so great fire making. um but Caroline pulled it off in the end and we're very, very, very impressed because honestly, would I have been able to have made a fire under that sort of pressure? I don't know. So I'm just commenting as a spectator, but obviously it was so hard.
Yeah, I feel like it would be much harder than it looks. Then the final showdown begins between Caroline and Ferris. Were you convinced at this point? I mean, you'd been on the campaign trail back at the villa. Were you certain that you'd convinced enough people to vote for Ferris, or was there still a bit of doubt in your mind?
Well, it was never my intention to like convince anyone to vote for Ferris. It was more to convince people to keep an open mind and look at all the moves that either player has made. And then I said I think Ferris had played a better
Okay.
game. Um, because I wanted to, had Caroline made an epic, epic, epic speech and laid out all her moves, maybe I would have changed my mind. But I already knew how Ferris had played, and so I was always going to vote for him. And I remember when I was coming up with my question that I wanted to surprise the audience and keep them on their toes in terms of who I was actually going to vote for. It was very obvious that Raymond was going to vote for Ferris, and I just wanted to make him sweat a little bit. I think he thought that
You
he had my
certainly
full.
did.
Yeah, I think he thought he had my full-fledged support at the beginning, was smiling at me, and then as soon as I asked my questions, he was like scared.
No, we love it. We'd love a sassy jury question, and it's definitely good to, yeah, make them work for it. You don't want to just hand over a check, you
That's
know, let someone else.
$500,000. I'm not gonna make it
Exactly.
easy for you.
So it was amazing. He did end up receiving every single vote, though.
Yeah.
Was that a surprise to you? I was really shocked, particularly at Kitty's vote, for example.
Yeah, I think it's it's crazy when it's a unanimous 9-person vote for the winner. I also didn't really know where Kitty was going to vote, although I would say that, she had been a part of all our discussions while she was at the jury villa, and very obvious that a lot of us were, rooting for Ferris. So I think maybe the majority like thought on that influenced her as well, even prior to the questioning at jury.
Yeah, it was honestly a fantastic season. I was even a bit concerned that Caroline had been building a bit of a resume and that she could even take it. So I know it wasn't like as nail biting as some finishes that we've had before, but they still did a great job of keeping that tension.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations on a great season. I think you
Thank
played
you.
a great game. I think you represented a fantastic character. You played as yourself. We all fell in love with you. How has life been post Survivor?
Life has been good. I'm back at the gym. Need to get my fitness back up. Because as soon as I came back from Survivor, I think I just didn't do anything for 3 weeks. 3 months because
Fair enough.
my body needed to recover. I'm taking this time now to do a little bit of travel. I'm going to the US this Sunday and I'm going to go around, and then you'll see me in New York at the end for the season 46 finale party.
How exciting! Oh, so you're doing the party circuit. How are you feeling about season 46 at the moment? I'm a few
I'm
episodes behind.
I just actually caught up yesterday, and it's really really sad to see a lot of like really really loved characters go. Jessica Chong, so sad she went episode 2, but I'm actually gonna meet up with her in San Francisco, so get chonged, get ready.
Yep, double
um
charmed. I'm
and I'm also
excited.
rooting for now Venus. I love that she's, getting her voice heard now, and I kind of really really like Charlie. I love how he's
Is he the Swifty?
unapologetically. He is a Swiftie, and that's
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
He's unapologetically a Swiftie. That's fine, and he's just like himself and having a great time out there. So rooting for those two.
Yeah, it's a fun season. I'm enjoying the casting. There's a lot of like larger than life characters.
Hmm.
Who from your cast are you still in touch with?
Well, I'd like to say I'm still in touch with everyone. I did create the group chat for everyone once we got
Oh,
back.
that's sweet.
Yeah. It's so easy to see everyone in Melbourne as well. So I've caught up with everyone in Melbourne multiple times. We're actually going to see Eden's comedy this Friday, in
Oh
Melbourne.
yes, at the festival. How good.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to laugh, and support him. And yeah, it's been just amazing. I love our Survivor community. I love how, everyone knows that Survivor was a game and we're all friends and we've all been bonded by our traumatic experiences for life. And I'm really, really hoping that for the next few seasons of Australian Survivor, the cast can experience exactly what we had.
Oh, fantastic. Speaking of future seasons, would you play again?
I'd love to, 100%. My story hasn't finished, but I probably need some time to like regain my fitness. My iron levels are still deficient. I did check with the doctor not too long ago, so I need to take those iron tablets and then we'll see from there. But I would absolutely love to.
Well, I certainly hope we see you again on our screens. Thank you so much, Eileen, for joining me on The Cringe is Real, and have a great time in the States.
Thank you for having me, and I'll see you soon, Sam.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to the gorgeous Aileen Chong for joining me for a little kiki about her experience on Australian Survivor Titans vs Rebels. I'll be back with some more off-season episodes whenever I bloody well feel like it, and I'll talk to you then. Bye bye.